You're waiting in line at the grocery checkout counter. Suddenly, your heart starts racing. You start to feel lightheaded and you break out into a cold sweat. After a minute, you start to feel overwhelmed by negative thoughts. Am I having a heart attack? Will I pass out? It's hard to breathe and your hands and feet start to tingle. You are absolutely terrified. You are having a panic attack. According to the Mayo Clinic, a panic attack is a sudden episode of intense fear that triggers severe physical reactions when there is no real danger or apparent cause. Panic attacks can be very debilitating and can affect your life drastically. Fortunately, that does not have to be the case. The most common advice that we are given in dealing with panic attacks include breathing deeply, calming yourself, distracting yourself. Notice that whenever we follow the advice we are given to basically try to actively fight or resist panic attacks, the opposite usually happens. We actually end up intensifying the attacks and also lengthening their duration. In fact, we actually end up triggering multiple panic attacks in succession until we reach exhaustion. Here is a very important, very key point that we all miss. It is when we reach exhaustion, that is, when we stop fighting the panic attacks, that they eventually recede in intensity and stop altogether. The first step, therefore, in learning how to manage panic attacks is actually to stop resisting them and accept that they will happen again. Some of us are just wired to be more prone to having panic attacks. It is actually not having panic attacks themselves that keep us in this miserable, hopeless cycle, but the fear of having them. When we accept that they will happen, we have already taken the biggest step in diffusing them. The science behind panic attacks can be explained via the panic loop. A panic attack usually starts with a heightened sensation. We may, for instance, feel a bit jittery, or perhaps we may notice that we are breathing a little harder. Some of us might even have a dizzy spell, or break out into a cold sweat. We start to think about these heightened sensations, and in the process, we magnify them. We then proceed to make a judgment that these sensations are bad. This is where we start to think things like, am I having a heart attack? Am I having a stroke? Oh my God, am I going to pass out? We then desperately try to make the sensations go away. We do things like deep breathing or active distraction. Or we try forcefully to calm down. In effect, we are doing everything to resist the onset of the panic attack. Unfortunately, what we have now done is to tell our brain that we are in danger, so our brain then sends even more heightened sensations, and the vicious cycle is begun and then perpetuated. We now go into repeated cycles of full-blown panic attacks. The human body has a fight-flight-freeze response to danger that dates back to our prehistoric ancestors. This fight-flight-freeze system, or F3, is critical to our survival from actual danger. Notice how fast and athletic you become in dodging a falling object when someone yells, "Watch out!" That's F3. The unfortunate thing, however, is that we can also trigger this system if we think that there is a threat or if we are in danger, even if there isn't and we are not. In dealing with panic attacks, the important thing is to not fight or react to the trigger. Remember that the panic attack only proceeds when we allow it to, by reacting or fighting the heightened sensations. If we literally just let them happen, we take away the main fuel of these attacks, and the attacks naturally extinguish. Triggers versus causes. Triggers can include A. Any event, sensation, or feeling that increases anxiety. B. A feeling that your heart is pounding. C. A queasy stomach. D. Anything you or your body senses or interprets as danger. Causes can include A. You start to worry about anxiety. Oh no, is it happening again? B. Catastrophizing. I can't breathe. What if I pass out? Am I going to die? C. You tell yourself that the situation is bad or unacceptable. D. You try to make it go away. I must make this stop. I have to fight this. Did you notice anything? The triggers are all things we cannot control, but the causes are all under our control. In other words, we do not have to respond to the triggers. When we respond to the triggers, we ourselves are the cause of the repeated, prolonged panic attacks. If we now go back to the panic loop, we can see that we are the ones perpetuating the loop. We, therefore, are also the solution to breaking that loop. Steps to stop your panic attacks. First, get a physical exam to rule out actual physical illness. Many symptoms of panic attacks are very similar to symptoms of actual physical sickness. A crucial first step to your peace of mind is to get checked by your doctor to rule out diseases. Next, decrease overall anxiety. Panic attacks always seem to come from nowhere. In reality, if you study your triggers, over time, you will notice that you seem to get more panic attacks when you are tired, or perhaps if there is a stressful event in your life, or sometimes even when you are really excited over a coming event. When you decrease your overall anxiety in general, there is a very big chance that the frequency of your panic attacks will decrease. Learn de-stressing techniques. Many times, we cannot control life stressors. If you have to work longer hours, for instance, you may not have a choice. You certainly would not know when your car is going to break down. What you can control, however, is learning de-stressing techniques like meditation. You can deliberately schedule meditation into your day. They can be 5-minute breaks here and there 4 or 5 times a day. In the beginning, they may not seem to help much, but over just a few weeks, you will notice that you are much calmer. Talk about your panic disorder openly. We generally have a fear of being shamed for having panic attacks. Yes, there are inconsiderate people, but what you will find is that the majority of people will make a great effort to show empathy and support. This will go a long way to reassure you that panic attacks are nothing to fear. Whenever you start to experience heightened sensations, describe the things you are feeling out loud. I am feeling nervous. I am beginning to hyperventilate. My chest feels tight. I feel a little dizzy. Then say to yourself, this is uncomfortable, inconvenient, but not dangerous. Make space for your sensations. Notice what you are feeling and allow it to be there. Observe your sensations. Don't distract yourself. Avoidance is a trigger. It's okay to feel it. Remind yourself that your medical results indicate that you do not have any disease and that these feelings actually are just triggers and nothing more. Remind yourself that you control what happens next and you will begin to feel better. The first few weeks you do this, it won't stop you from going into full panic, as that panic behavior is still deeply ingrained in you. But in far less time than you imagined, you will begin to see substantial improvement in your coping ability. When you are in the middle of an actual panic attack, a very effective coping technique is to rate your sensations. Observe your sensations and use a 10-point system to literally give them a score. You might observe some nervousness, a little difficulty in breathing, a queasy stomach. You might say, "Oh, I feel pretty bad. That's a 7. Then, as the intensity of your sensations go up and down, you would say, now it is 8. Oh, now it just went down to 6. And you keep going till the panic attack diffuses itself. Notice that instead of avoiding or fighting, you are accepting your panic attack and dealing with it in real time. You are taking away the fuel of the panic attack, which is your own negative thoughts of perceived danger. Think about it. If you ran into a bear while hiking, are you going to stand in front of the bear and rate how big it is or how thick its fur is or take a selfie with it? The sheer ridiculousness of rating a panic attack literally tells your brain that there is no chance of any danger. Therefore, the panic loop is broken and your brain begins to calm you down. One last helpful thing is to notice when and what triggers your panic attacks. Over time, you will recognize the beginnings of an attack quickly and be able to deal with it sooner. In summary, panic attacks are started and then fueled by our own perception of danger. If we are able to control this perception of danger, we can diffuse panic attacks. To free ourselves from panic attacks, we have to be willing to have them. Acceptance is key. Coping with panic attacks is a skill that you can learn and master, and in due time, you will get better at it. Eventually, the frequency and duration of your panic attacks will subside, and you will be able to live relatively free from panic attacks.